Callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Whether you're dealing with engineering or technology, when you talk about writing and reading, when you're talking about the refinement of speech, when you talk about grammar or the dialectic, or if you're talking about concepts of astronomy or music.
The people from the Nile Valley were the very first people to develop a concept of time. Time is a concept that sprang from the minds of African people. They were the first people to divide the day into 24 hours. They were the first people to develop the calendar, 365 and a quarter days. They were the first people to build with stone. They were the first people to develop systems of education, the first universities. They invented writing. They invented paper. They developed libraries. They were the first physicians, the first psychologists, the first dentists, the first brain surgeons. They were the first governors, the first rulers, the first men and women to orient structures to celestial bodies in order to harness the spiritual energy that's generated within a structure that is properly aligned to celestial spheres. So in other words, they were human beings who knew how to manifest the power of God on earth.
Welcome everyone to the Melanated Roots Radio Show. We have a live show for you today. Melanated Radio Show is brought to you by the Black Talk Radio Network. Today is Monday, September 18th, 2017, and we do have a live show for you. And your host for the show is Brother Tommy and Brother Rio. And our topic today is dealing with matrimony versus marriage. And we have some powerful information on that and the invisible contracts that we go into when we participate in these unions, so to speak, that they put out there for us. If you would like to ask a question or share some information on this topic, please call 866-510-9025. Please join the BTR community as well. One way to support the network and allow information to continue to be exchanged between conscious people with conscious minds. We need to make sure that we are participating and also that we are doing things that supports the platform so we can continue to communicate, get positive information, and spread the word. I just was you able to hear the introduction and me coming in, or was it just your mic that wasn't working?
Yeah, it was just my mic that was malfunctioning. I heard everything. I'm doing good, brother. Feeling good. How you feeling?
Oh yeah, feeling good. Just went on a bike ride on that trail. Was able to get in a good amount of mileage. So enjoyed the beautiful scenery, being in nature. So, I'm feeling good. So definitely looking forward to exchanging some information with the people and making sure we discuss things, enlighten people, and people enlighten us as well. Basically have a exchange of information and ideas. And I think this topic that we're about to bring some information on, because there's a lot of brothers and sisters who, want to do the right thing and have families and be married and things of that nature. But we got to understand, what marriage is in this system in which we exist.
I think that's a very good way of putting it, because, it's just natural. And, it's just laws of nature that people get together and procreate. And, of course, what goes along with that is our ability and our wants and our desires to support one another, as well as build a community that's going to be, effective in helping us move forward and, have a productive life. And, if you're having kids, of course, you want the community to be able to foster and grow and be supportive as well, because, who your kids are going to, procreate with and have a relationship with. You want them to have the same things that you have and to build upon that and to go even further with it. So, you want to afford them those same opportunities. But, I feel that through the propaganda system, we've been misled and, we kind of lost our way, as we have with many other things, as to the best way to come about those goals, But that's what we'll be talking about today. We won't start off necessarily talking about the relationship side of it, how men and women interact and, how they should, best support each other. But, it may get to that. But in the beginning, we're going to talk about the overall concepts. So, what you got, brother? I mean, you always up on some current articles and events. What caught your eye today?
Well, the same old thing. Watching and tracking the movements, and basically studying the moves that they're making in situations as they arise, and looking around at the landscape and seeing the unfolding events on many different levels. And so, just being keenly aware of that. And also, Brother Dave had a really positive show before our show came on, and, contemplating a lot of things that he was saying, and then different brothers who was coming on there that was kicking, contemplating a lot of things they've been saying, been really on them same wavelengths in a lot of ways, in terms of really trying to be consciously aware and also make sure, that I'm prepared and talking with people I'm close to, about the things, preparation, and, understanding, how events are going to unfold, and trying to put ourselves in the best situation to, look out for more than just ourselves, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. And, it's, things are getting heated up, and, a conversation that we had, where we came to the realization that, the more things change, the more they stay the same, because the conflict that they're having with North Korea, I guess it can kind of be compared to the conflict that they had with Russia. I think, back during the 50s and the 60s, they called it a Cold War, but, it was a lot of posturing, to keep the people in fear and terror. And the reason I say that was, there was an article I think me and you shared about the construction company that is, they're making billions off of the sudden urge of people to create these underground bunkers. I think they said it was about 12 feet deep, and you can get them, in various sizes, and accommodate for whatever budget that you want to expend for that. But you have a lot of stars, actors, entertainers, as well as people who are just well-to-do that are putting out a lot of money to get these bunkers. Mm-hmm. And it just reminded me of the Cold War scare, and it seems like it's a similar reaction. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Brother Rio. Is there something in your background that keeps making a certain noise, like some type of electric computer type sound?
Oh, you picking that up? Huh? Yeah. my apologies, brother.
Yeah, consistently. Yeah, I'm thinking, okay, is that a toy? Yeah.
You're gonna call me out on there, huh?
Nah, we had to shut it down. But no, I agree with you.
Is Brother, is my volume at a good level? Someone just texted me, said they can't hear me.
You sound pretty good to me. Let me your tone. Let me check one more thing. Go ahead and say something to me.
Check. Microphone check.
Oh yeah, you coming in pretty good in terms of on the buttons that I need to read, but you know I can't say, you know, I ain't on the other side, so I can't say, but so far you coming in pretty good.
Okay. All right. Did you have any comments on that shelter thing though?
No. I'm just, other than I'm in agreement with you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. It said I'm good now. So, all right, we off and running.
Okay. No. I feel you. I you know, I believe that's good information. But go ahead, move forward with what you said.
Well, there's one more thing I wanted to bring up. You know, I was listening to Brother Dave's show as well, and he read off an article that said that down in Florida, you know, they're trying to get legislation passed that if the power goes out, you legally can't use solar power.
Yeah, I heard that.
That is just crazy.
Well, I mean, no crazier than not being able to collect rainwater legally in states and different places where you cannot collect. It's against the law to collect rainwater. So, I mean, it's really them being very consistent in what they do. You know, they always have a reason for why they do it. You know, that there's certain people of certain consciousness that will buy into the reasoning. Oh, we're doing this or that for your benefit, you know, or yeah, we're doing this for the cosmological findings, you know. they'll run down something with some real fancy terms on you and slap that on there. But, you know, they've been, you know, but that's the situation we're in. You know, when we look at the status that we are in this country, you know what I'm saying? You're not you don't have true control and sovereignty, you know, so they give you rights and privileges and they can take them away as they choose. And if you just look and see the freedoms, the so-called freedoms that they give you, and then, you know, when they write executive orders and then restrict it and then restrict it again, then restrict it again, you know, they're, you know, these rights and privileges, you know, that all goes back to the status in which we're in the first place.
Yes, sir. And also speaks to those invisible contracts that you bring up. So, you know, I'm in complete agreement. You know, it does sound crazy just from, you know, I don't know, I guess conscious or a general perspective, but you know, it's just, I don't know. It never ceases to amaze me. That's just wild, man. It's just wild.
Yes, sir. Hey, but hold on, brother. Before we get into the topic of the show, this is what I wanted to do, because
we have a caller just raise his hand, just so you know, as well.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the caller first, and then I'll get to that. Caller, area code 719. Say your name and go ahead and state what you have to say. Oh, okay. Area code 719 muted themselves. Brother.
Okay.
Ray.
I guess they're just coming online then.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Go ahead with your statements, brother. What was you about to say?
No, what I was gonna say is, you know, really what it boils down to is how well black folk or people who call themselves black are going to be willing to work together, and who are going to be willing to see each other as, you know, get away from the seeing themselves as separate and understand that success for all of us lies in us working together, and the original family coming together. Family, that's what coming together of us as in family and family units and groups was our strength in the first place. And that is the foundation. And until, you know, that comes back, you know what I'm saying, it's going to be very difficult, you know what I'm saying, to implement anything when it comes to being able to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, and do the things we need to do to deal with this European, irregardless what it is that he has plans on doing. You feel what I'm saying? So I got this little video that's about 3 minutes and some change. Importance of black folk getting along and working together and communicating with each other. And I think this brother does a good job of giving a reasoning or a psychological thought or concept on why this is occurring, because even in this day and time with all this stuff going on, I'm still walking past brothers and sisters in different places and spaces that don't want to acknowledge you. You know what I'm saying? Don't want to even, have contact or at least the how you're doing, the greeting in terms of a common thinking concept or understanding. You know what I mean?
I do. It's just like, I've been to New York like once, but I always hear stories. It was just for a brief time, but you hear stories about how people, they put the head down and they go where they need to go. They don't want to be hassled, and they don't want to be, troubled by everybody, because everybody's got to hustle. Everybody, they talking to you, they want something. They're trying to get some money, or they're trying to set you up for something, or, you just ain't trying to hear it. You're just trying to get where you're going and do your business. Yeah. And I think that has infected us nationwide. So I'm not calling out New York. I'm not saying it's just New York. I think it's within our culture now, and it's nationwide, just because we may have that stereotype or that stigma that, oh man, what they want, why they talking to me? It can't be just hi. They want something.
Right. And plus I think that a lot of people are really due to heavy oppression and heavy violence and brutality coming from the European culture towards our and also the propaganda of animalistic concepts, big lips, dark skin, just the horror that they've placed upon us has made a lot of us truly ashamed to be truly who we are. So let me run this real fast, Brother Real.
Why has the history of African peoples been erased? Well, we don't live in a fair world. Things aren't fair. You don't get equal opportunities. You get the opportunities that you create for yourself. And if someone gets in there first and they conquer you, they colonize you, they enslave you, they simply make your history disappear to make it look like they conquered, colonized, and enslaved nobodies. When people have a history, that makes you a somebody. So if you remove the history, you become a nobody. And so your history disappearing, nobody's lamenting the loss of that history. That's why conquerors, colonizers, and enslavers make the people whose history they've conquered, colonized, and enslaved disappear. There are psychological reasons why people would want to associate themselves with a history. There is a link between what someone thinks of themselves, what someone thinks of their people, and their history. Now, scholars talk about personal esteem, that means self-esteem, and then you have interpersonal or group esteem, which is what you think of your group or what you think of your race, racial esteem. Self-esteem and racial esteem are not the same thing. Someone can have very high self-esteem, where they think highly of themselves, and very low racial esteem, where they think very badly of other black people. And in truth, most black people have very high self-esteem and very low racial esteem. And that's one of the reasons why black people are prone to fight each other, prone to disagree with each other, prone to conflict with each other, because someone thinks very highly of themselves and someone thinks very lowly of their group. And what happens is, if people can call each other the N and the B words, they're really saying, I don't give a monkey's about the black race. They've really just said that their racial esteem is very, very low. But every black person usually has very high personal esteem. So if someone thinks highly of themselves and very lowly of their group, that is a recipe for fighting. That is a recipe for conflict. And the way to raise people's racial esteem is to introduce them to their history. And if the history happens to be a great history, a history that people objectively can be proud of, they will see their people in a very different way to how they see their people at present. And that's the difference between high self-esteem, low racial esteem, to having a balance where you have high self-esteem and high racial or ethnic esteem. The purpose of my work generally is to build that psychological balance between high personal esteem and high self-esteem.
Yes, sir. So, in terms of what I was saying, Brother Rio, the working together, the lack of working together that we're doing, what do you think? What's your thoughts on the video?
I think it was very powerful. It brought forth some very good information as to us being able to work together. It's definitely needed. But I'm just gonna go ahead and go there, man. In reference to the question that you asked me before you played the clip, and in light of what he just stated, I can come up with another reason as to why we can hold our heads down and not really engage each other on the street. Some of it may have to do with what he was talking about with racial pride, but I think it comes with the understanding that, how we have been towards each other for the last few centuries. In particular, we can just put the Moors out there, because we know that the Moors, once they got kicked out of Spain, a lot of them came over here and they started subjugating us, and they pretty much, sold us out to the indigenous population that was already here. Pretty much sold us out to the Europeans that were starting to colonize over here. So when you have people who look like you, and you're welcoming and accepting into your culture, and they're stabbing you in the back, and I'm quite sure it was some indigenous populations and different tribes is doing the same thing. But when you can't trust the people that look like you, it calls for some healing, brother. And I think we still going through that today. A lot of our minds have been colonized, so we may think from a European perspective, and you just can't tell from the outside. So it's kind of hard to, along with the COINTELPRO operations, it's kind of hard to tell who to trust and who not to trust. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I feel you. But it's something that we must deal with. Because working together, that's how we were able to accomplish all the great things we've done in the past. When we look at our history, our ancient history and the history of our people, and we know the masses of the people weren't always afforded higher aspect to certain knowledge and information. But for those who were initiated and those who did understand the different levels of energy grids and electromagnetism and how to control different sound wave, how to manipulate and understand things, working together is what enabled us to really be able to create some wonderful and majestic things. So when you retard that in a people to where they're no longer able to sit down at the table and work together to bring about the necessary change and the things you need for the benefit of your progeny, when the people get to that point, that's a pretty low point.
Yeah, follow man. We do have a caller on the board, 702. Do you have some comments or something you'd like to share?
Yes, hello. Thank you for taking my call. My name is Red from Ohio. I think that the clip that whatever that you just played, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been Paul Afami Grant. And it seemed like I kind of had like an issue with what he was saying, not to
the person talking?
disregard what he was saying at all.
Hold on for a second. Hold on for a second.
I'm sorry.
You mean
What's your issue?
you mean the person was talking? You thought it was who? Could you say that again? The person was a gentleman named Robin Walker. Who did you think it was?
Oh, I thought it was Paul. Ifeanyi Grant. I might be saying his name wrong, but he's another. I guess like another black. I don't know, lecturer or scholar, what have you, also in England. I guess they just sounded like really similar. But the only thing that I would that I'm kind of wondering about is that it seems like with Asian people, because or like, you know, East Asian, so Chinese, Japanese. My sister actually was learning like one of their languages, and actually had a friend of that descent. And the friend was telling her how they're not really all that, personable to each other, but it seems like they still have some type of unity. So that's what I kind of question. It's like, okay, yes, they might have, you know, high self-esteem, and then they might not display their high racial self-esteem. I don't know if they would, you know, as they're walking down the street, maybe if I might just be thinking about it wrong. But it seems like if they're just walking down the street, they don't necessarily say hi or smile at each other. But when it comes to doing business, they'll make sure they'll go to each other first. Or when it comes to, you know, backing each other, it might be, you know, World War II. You know, it's kind of like that communal feeling. So that's what I'm kind of struggling with. And like I said, I'm not, you know, taking away anything from him. I definitely would not say that I'm a scholar, but I'm just, you know, maybe just need some help, just better understanding that. And I'll mute my line.
No.
Well,
could you tell me your name
Red?
again? Could you say your name one more time?
Red from Ohio.
Red from Ohio. Go ahead, Mario.
Oh, well, I was just wondering, well, first of all, what part of Ohio? Because I went to high school in Cincinnati.
I'm sorry, it kind of cut out. I'm sorry, you said something about Cincinnati?
Yeah, I was just wondering what part of Ohio you were calling from, but that's neither here nor there. I wanted to ask you a question. Central? Okay.
I'm sorry, Central Ohio.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, you know, well, how do you feel when you're out on the streets and, you're being approached by, you know, someone of melanated color, just saying, or, just, you know, saying lovely day, or just trying to interact with you? What kind of feelings do you get depending on the situation, or,
what I would say is that it is kind of like a little, I know that y'all are having some tech issues. I've been listening basically since Tando Radio, but it does kind of sound a little gurgled. But I am a black female, and I feel like I kind of have like kind of lower self-esteem, but when I started like turning off the TV, I kind of started building up that self-esteem. But out in the real world, I feel like, you know, out in public, I still, you know, maintain that reserve, because I feel like there are so many different melanoid people who are very confused, and I don't want to, you know, get too involved. So, I mean, basically sometimes if someone does have like a friendly face, especially if it's a melanoid person, especially a black person, I will, you know, try to smile at them. Or if they say, how are you doing? I'll say, fine, how are you? Something like that, you know, versus, you know, somebody of the oppressive class, even though if they say, how are you doing? I'm fine. And I don't, you know, engage them. But I just feel like there's not really that many of us. Sometimes I will try to engage people, but, you know, they're just common with anybody. There's like that fear of rejection. And especially, I kind of feel like, at least with me, with how I've been trying to learn more, I feel like there is definitely that, you know, you want to hope the best for black people, but it doesn't seem like it's, you know, going that well, of course.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I mean, sometimes you have to, you know, I'm not saying to an extent that you just, you know, you have to let your guard down, and that, you know what I'm saying, you just have to be totally open with every black person you see just because they're a black person, because we do understand, you know, that there are people out there with energies, you know what I'm saying, who look exactly like you but are not vibrating or resonating on the same frequency at all. So I definitely think that the basis of discrimination of who and in what energies you should interact with should always remain present. But I'm just saying sometimes just a general sense of in very public spaces, you know what I'm saying, the hello, the nodding, the smiling, the black family over here who as a unit are getting things that they need and willing to, you know, say a hello to another person of the same ethnic group or of the same identities. You know, we're having such tough existences out here, and there's so many things that we have to experience under this oppression. So sometimes a casual hello or the right slide of conversation between energies brings about positive growth and change. You know what I'm saying? Just a general atmosphere of a lot more appreciation and, hey, how you doing? Good to see that you're doing well. That needs to be more persistent. What is your opinion of that?
Well, no, I definitely agree. I do try whenever possible. Like if I do feel like they might be a little bit more open, like not that long ago, like I saw, you know, especially like I love seeing black families because I feel like it's at least around me, especially like when you're out and about, you know, you'll see lots of black females and just their children, and sometimes they have like this look of stress on their face, but, you know, to see like an actual, you know, black male, black female, you know, and their children, it's, you know, it's kind of refreshing to feel like, okay, well, maybe we do have some type of hope. So I do try to like engage them a little bit more. So there definitely is a try, but then, you know, also just personally, sometimes I just don't really feel like speaking to anyone, but I just try to feel like at least try to have somewhat more of a pleasant look on my face, especially when it comes to our people to at least have some type of hope. That's basically what I try to hold on to.
Okay. Appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Brother Rio, go ahead and bring it. You with me? Okay. Yeah, and another thing in terms of the conversation that we were having, we're still trying to figure out. Brother Rio's going back and forth, so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with him. But you know, she, you know, Red makes a really good point in terms of you know what I'm saying, you know, you always, you know, you have your personal space, people have their personal space, and that needs to be respected. But I'm just talking about, yeah, I hear it, just the basic feel of community. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, what's going on, Brother Rio?
Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties at the house, man. The internet got disconnected, so I had to call in. But I'm back. I'm on the phone. You know, you got to watch the boards for me. But, yeah, I missed the whole conversation, so, you know, you can kind of catch me up as to what was going on.
Yeah, we was just after you went. You were still on before the video ended, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
I asked her a question, and then you know, shortly after she started answering the question, I got disconnected.
Yeah. She just she answered. She gave her experience and she gave her understanding of, you know what I'm saying, and, you know, in acknowledgement of that there needs to be more of a community response, and that type of environment could be more beneficial because, you know, we got to sit down and work together. That's going to be the bottom line. There ain't going to be no way around it, and we're going to have to make these plans work. So being able to sit down and have, you know, open dialogue amongst highly enlightened brothers and sisters, it has to take place, and then that way we can start laying the foundation to what we want to see the future be for our people, to what we want to see the future be for our children. We have to start laying those plans down, and those who are consciously thinking, those who are looking to put forward, you know, take those steps forward in terms of they've done the research, they've done the reading, they've done the personal journey. They're really to affect change in other people's lives. People are going to have to sit down and make it happen and work together. That's going to be the origin of that.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah, because we're gonna have to come to, we're gonna have to heal. We're gonna have to heal, and we're gonna have to be willing to engage each other And, we're going to have to open up, and we're going to have to be willing to be hurt, because that's the only way we're going to be able to build. And we just have to be, discerning about the people who we're going to build with. So I agree with you. I agree with you, brother.
Yes, sir. So you want to go ahead and move forward in what you were talking about, and how, let's go ahead and get into the topic, marriage versus matrimony. And a lot of people are married and have family, have children, really, don't understand the concept of how, their children have already been relegated over to another authority. Someone has taken the place of the parent. Marriage is binding us to invisible contracts and things that we must comply with that we're not aware of, and it's not the holy matrimony in the eyes of God, in that covenant with God that most people believe it to be, is it, Brother Rio?
No, sir, not at all. But I know that I was taught marriage as something totally different from what I have studied and learned. What it actually is. And just like everything else, it's multi-layered. So I think in order to get an understanding of at least marriage and how we deal with it in the United States, I think we should go over a little bit of information to kind of give us a little backdrop. Mm-hmm. So I know that in America, or in the United States, we practice two forms of law. You have the common law, and then you have what you would call your statutes, your codes, mm-hmm. and municipalities and different divisions of that nature. Mm-hmm. And marriage is kind of thought differently depending on which aspect of law that you are talking about, and that's not even to say the religious aspect of it, or how we are taught to view it, from a religious standpoint. I was raised a Christian. I was raised Baptist, so my upbringing had specific lessons as to what marriage was, what marriage wasn't, and a few lessons about how it should be handled and done. But as I studied law, it kind of flipped this on its head. So this is an article out of a journal, a law journal, Community Property versus Common Law. And it's from the University of Maryland Law Journal of Race, Religion, Gender, and Class, Volume 11. Issue 1, Article 2. The origin and civil law foundation of the community property system. Why California adopted it and why community property principles benefit women. What I'm going to do, I just highlighted some things out of this article, so as not to go into too much detail. But it is not possible to fully understand the community system of marital property law without understanding its foundation. The origin of community property in the United States lies outside of English law, which is the common law, in the distinct realm of Spanish civil law. Courts noted that the whole system by which the rights of property between husband and wife are regulated and determined is borrowed from the civil and Spanish law. These civil sources help to show how a community property system differs substantially from a traditional common law system. Under the traditional common law, property was under a title system. A wife who worked shoulder to shoulder with her husband received nothing at dissolution if they got divorced or one person passed away or something of that nature, if she did not share title to the asset she helped to improve. A 12th century code of canon law described marriage as a matrimonial covenant whose properties are unity and dissolubility. Unlike a marriage based on ordinary contract law, a covenant marriage, at least under traditional common law, was supposed to be more permanent So there was no end to it upon death, of course. But community property, which is really what's practiced here in the States. Partnership first. Under a system of community property, husband and wife are treated as partners. This is different from the traditional common law notion of marriage, which saw a unity between husband and wife such that, in the famous words of William Blackstone, spouses were one person in law. Community property recognizes a different relationship between spouses. It embraces a partnership that the relation of husband and wife is regarded by the civil law as a species of partnership. However, it is partnership of an economic rather than a moral nature. So the law regards the relationship between spouses in much the same way as it does a commercial partnership. This declares spouses subject to the same rights and duties of non-marital business partners. The property relation between husband and wife under the community property system is radically different with the principles of common law. Although marriage and community property jurisdiction is often referred to as a partnership between husband and wife, the partnership which exists is different from a commercial partnership in two ways. First, the partnership arising from a community property system is not something the spouses agree to. Instead, it arises by operation of law when the couple marry. Recognition of the woman as an independent legal status is the second factor that distinguishes a civil law system from a traditional common law system of marital property. This is different from the one person in law unity of husband and wife under the old common law. So community law pretty much rejects that the coming together and viewing it as one. So they choose to look at it as two separate entities just coming together, basically for business purposes.
Yeah.
A third and very significant distinction from the common law is that community property systems are not title-based. In fact, the community property system pays little attention to title. Who has or holds title is not important. It is the source of the property which determines classification. This means that a spouse's share of the community at dissolution does not depend in any way on the amount he or she contributed to the community or that community property. So to pretty much sum up, a separate legal identity gives the ability of the married woman to own separate property in her own name under the community property system. And this is primary. Under the old common law system, when a man and a woman marry, the husband received the ownership, management, and control of his wife's personal property, which he could dispose of without her consent. This is because traditional common law systems of property centered around title. You got any comments on that, brother?
Hold on. We got Brother Bragg's got his hands up. He gonna go ahead and bring in a comment. Go ahead, Brother Bragg.
I was just thinking as you were saying that, man. You sound like two corporations merging.
Right, exactly.
That's what it sounds like to me. That's all I had to say, man. I just wanted to interject that small point. I'm sitting back teasing because your boys are on point. You always are. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just sitting back maxing out with you boys. I'm enjoying this, no doubt.
Okay. All right, bet. Yeah.
Appreciate that, brother.
Yes, sir. And we're going to keep moving on this topic. It's definitely getting into status, Brother Bragg, so we definitely want to hear what you got to say.
Oh, yeah. I assume Brother Bragg going to be kicking. If not this show, then the next show because, where this is going, a lot of this can't be covered in just one show. But did you have any thoughts on that, brother? Did that seem pretty clear to you?
Clear as what do they say? Yeah, clear, very clear.
So, basically, not to beat a dead horse, but, the common law pretty much stated that, the woman, not necessarily that she didn't have any rights, but her rights were conjoined with her husband, which if we get into the definitions, how they define those words, I guess the the people who created those terms, their mindset becomes clear. But pretty much the woman is, for lack of a better term, behind the man, and her property becomes his property. He becomes the husband, the manager of the property, and she is under his protection. So, which, I mean, is a double-edged sword, because the law comes to him if something is out of order. It doesn't come to her, it comes to him. So he assumes the head of the household. He assumes all that responsibility, and, you know, that's the common law. But when it came into community property, you know, they changed that. They looked at both of them as separate entities, both having the right to own property. And other than contract, you know, that's pretty much the way it's going to be. So you can always contract out of anything. But, you know, my personal belief is that the community property aspect was looked at because it was advantageous to the government and how they wanted to manipulate the people within the country. But we'll kind of get to that.
Okay. Hold on, brother. Oh yeah, hold on for a second, brother Rio. Brother Roz is about to make a comment. Go ahead, brother Roz.
Okay.
Hey, peace and love to you all. How you doing today?
Ain't nothing. What's up, bro? How you doing?
Great, brother. How you?
Hey, I'm still learning. I wanted to say peace to Brother Bragg and the sister Red. It's good to hear her too. I wanted to say two things. The first thing is one thing, when my wife and I got married, the main reason we did, and I just told her, I said it's a contract, and I said at least because the system of white supremacy really left my family in shambles as far as the way a lot of us relate to each other. So I told her, you know, I said, if anything happened to me, the little bit that I have, I want to make sure you can get it, and that's the only way to guarantee it. Otherwise, we really didn't want to go through the process of marriage, especially her. She was very much against it. She just felt it was old school, and I agreed with her in a lot of ways. But I told her, I said, you know, for me, the main reason to enter into this contract, and I explained to her that it was a contract and that it was a legally binding business contract to protect the little bit of assets I have if something happens to me, that none of my relatives can come out of left field and say, hey, you know, y'all weren't married, he was my son, or here's my brother, you know, I'm coming to get whatever it is. That was the main reason that we entered into it, and vice versa for her. In certain ways. And it was just interesting that you were talking about the whole common law system, because it really goes back to a system of pimping. You know, it's no different than when a pimp gets a prostitute, he owns her money, she becomes his property. And in the European system, that is the origin of that. If you read the book, The Iceman Inheritance by Michael Bradley, he discusses the origin of quote-unquote sexism in the old way that Europeans did things. And he was talking about in the days of the caveman, when they were living in the European steppes, they had no access to food. So men were more valuable to the society than women, because they could always hunt and they did not get pregnant. Women, when pregnant, would basically use up twice the resources but be unable to contribute anything in terms of being able to hunt and kill to contribute to the food of the society. So that's the origin of patriarchy, and the fact that the woman took the back seat and men became the dominant factor. That's also the origin of, so-called anti-sexual behavior, because the males would go on these expeditions for long periods of time, and the more successful males became the dominant males, and they would usually choose younger males for sexual partners depending on how long they were away from their women. And the women were left at home in the caves with the whatever little farm animals they could muster, and the children. So that was the origin of lesbianism, because they had no mates when their mates were out hunting for long periods, so they would use each other. All of these things are the origin of European society. Same thing with raping animals. That all started in the caves. So all of this stuff are remnants of their system that they've codified, made laws, and indoctrinated other people who had systems that were different to theirs, that either honored the woman or gave her an equal place in the society. So I just find that law being written that way, and essentially making the woman the property of the male, and anything that she owns stepping into the marriage puts that under his jurisdiction, just goes right back to that ancient European system of dominating women, and that sort of how that plays out in today's society. And now their women have gotten all of our women on board with this nonsense via this feminization. What you call it? Oh man, I'm tongue-tied. What's the term I'm looking for? Feminism. Under this false guise of feminism, when black women were the most autonomous women in history until we encountered white people and Arabs who came with the patriarchal system that suppressed women's rights altogether. So this is all remnants of that, and I just like the way that that you're outlining those laws so that we can get a deeper understanding for how they've indoctrinated us to accept their system as normal and literally turn away from our own is detrimental. And we can see why there's gender confusion issues and all the stuff that we're dealing with now are just refined versions of what their ancient culture was all along. So thanks again, and I'll mute my line. Great show. Absolutely,
Brother La. And what I love about it, Brother Rio, is the way he peeped the game on that, because when you were reading that and you were talking about the origin of it being in common law, you know what I'm saying, I was understanding the very same thing, because when you were saying that how the woman was being spoken for the man and her property went through him, yeah, that's the origin of European law, and Brother Roz peeped it real smooth and understood the different sides of it, because we know that we come from matriarchal societies and we had queen mothers that ruled in peace and prosperity for thousands of years. So women being in a position of high esteem, or women being in positions of rulership, and you know what I'm saying, and being in positions of wisdom for our nation, that we were already there. So I'm feeling Roz big time, because I peeped the exact same thing, because that's exactly what it was. So then that further hits home your point, when we go back to their even though they're operating between two different ways here, they had a common law way, which is supposed to have had a little more protections, as opposed to now we're dealing with the UCC code, statutes and codes, and they move the understanding of these relationships or these contracts that we go into. Now you about to basically unpack how that's being done from their messed up origin in their common law in the first place to where we're at now. So I feel you.
Excuse me, can I say one last thing, brother? I'm sorry for interjecting.
No, you good.
Most definitely. Go ahead, brother. Okay, thank you so much. I was just going to say, you just hit me with something when you were using the term common law. And a lot of times, we are conditioned to accept terms that they use as being just platonic, ordinary, quote-unquote, English statements, but these things are spells. And it's no different than when black people hear the term criminal justice system. We've invested in thinking that this system is treating us equitably. So we say, yes, I'm going to the criminal justice system to adjudicate a problem I have with another black person or with a white person or whoever the person may be. But what they're telling you is that criminals run the justice system. And we don't understand it that way until they do something to us. And then we have to go and really try and deal with an issue. They murder one of our relatives, or they abuse us in some form or fashion, and then we get the treatment that we see on the news every day. Then we start to realize, hey, this criminal's running the justice system. And like Dr. Ben used to say, in Kemet, the scales of my aunt were always balanced, letting you know when you walked into a courtroom, you got justice. He said all across the United States, the scales are imbalanced. So they're telling you you're not getting justice, you're getting just this, meaning whatever they choose to throw at you. And with the common law, they're telling you that this abuse, systematic mistreatment of women is common.
Right.
So they made it a common law. This is exactly how they think. This is in their DNA, how they function. This is their cultural, religious, socio-political model, and it is common. So now we're making it common law. So I just wanted to throw that in there, too. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Brother Rio.
Very good observation.
Hold on, Brother Rio. Go ahead, Brother Bragg.
Also, man, you got to remember, we're dealing with the rights of kings, ecclesiastical law, law of equity, Roman law. All of this is where all these laws come from. The canons that you just spoke of, all of this goes hand in hand. So you're dealing with a feudal system where all men were born into slavery. All men had to pledge fealty to a king. If you were born in a villain, you may never leave that area. V-I-L-L-I-E-N, villain. From that vicinity. All this comes from, and now we can step into the Holy See. Man, he gets really deep from that point on. Because we spread all into the law you're talking about, into contracts. Compact contract, same thing.
Right.
As well as covenant is a contract.
Yes.
I don't want to start running too fast because I want people to follow you. But you, once again, you're killing it. I'm gonna sit back. Please.
Now let me kick this at you, Brother Rio, and also like in one thing that we gotta in like I said, my dad used to say, how his father used to say, if you don't know nothing, you can't do nothing. And he's so true about that, because like Brother Roz was saying, a lot of people believe that they go into marriage with the idea and the concept of building something with this person, being able to protect their assets and the energy that them and their mate put forth in terms of and put into their children, and they want that prosperity to continue on. See, but when we don't understand contractual law and their laws that govern the existence. Now, I ain't gonna say the country that governs this corporation. We would have understood. Okay, well then, I need to get an understanding of trust law. If I want to, in this system, be able to pass something down, my progeny or some type of energy that my children can build off, then instead, let me the hell with going up here and so-called going in front of God and saying I do. Let me run down here and get some information on trust. You feel me?
Yeah, but slow down, brother. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. Let's finish setting the stage.
Yeah, but it's not really the point of fingers. It's just to point out how once we do become knowledgeable about things, we can start putting into play the things that we're looking to accomplish. That's pretty much what I was trying to say.
Yeah, once we have the knowledge, we can definitely, and it's more beneficial to work on it as a unit, so that we can stand together. And, we definitely, there are some solutions out there, but, once we join in these solutions, unified, then, we have a lot better chance of, having them respected. Well, they ain't gonna have no choice but to respect it, but, for every action, there's gonna be, a reaction. And, united, we're gonna be in a position to be able to, shoulder the repercussions of that. What I do want to go to is, they did an excellent job of bringing out the mind.
Hold on, Brother Rio. I hate to interrupt you, but we're right at the middle point of the show. We have to take a quick station identification break, and then right after that, brother, we're gonna pick up right where you at, and we're gonna go ahead and bring it home. Okay, so let's go to a quick break. You're listening to the Melanated Roots Radio Show, brought to you by Black Talk Radio Network, and we will be back after this break.
For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com. The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to the Melanated Roots Radio Show, brought to you by Black Talk Radio Network. Brother Rio, you was about to bring some information as we continue down our topic of marriage versus matrimony. And are we really getting married in the eyes of God, or are we participating in a form of commerce that has been created to bring us into the fold? Go ahead, Brother Rio.
But what I was saying was the brothers did a very excellent job. Go ahead and hit them with that number real quick, brother. So if the people, first-time listeners have a comment or they want to jump into the conversation, they have the ability to do so.
Yes, sir.
So I can't see the number.
Yes, sir, brother. That number to call in with your comment is 866-510-9025.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
All right. They did an excellent job of highlighting the mentality of the people that we're dealing with. And, a few shows back, we brought it all the way back down to, the doctrine of discovery and all the papal bulls, that came out from the doctrine of discovery. saying that the colonizers pretty much have the right to enslave and take over anyone already found in the lands, quote unquote, discovered by their explorers.
Mm-hmm.
And you have different doctrine that have come down since then that represent that same mentality and that same idea,
mm-hmm.
whether it be manifest destiny or the way that the Europeans carved up Africa in the Berlin Conference,
mm-hmm.
giving themselves different jurisdiction over different parts of Africa, basically taking over the people and the resources. Of course, the people being part of the resources.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing has happened here. It just looks a little different. So after Manifest Destiny, when they took over all the land and they were changing over to a new system, you have these chartered companies that came in,
mm-hmm.
and these companies eventually became corporations.
Mm-hmm.
The corporations took over the Republican government that was here, and they started to implement a brand new game.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're seeing is just a trickling down and a manifestation of that same mentality from that same doctrine and aspect
mm-hmm.
that has the European, or the Tammuz wanting to conquer the global system.
Can I say one thing, brother?
Yes, sir.
When you were talking about this mindset and mentality, you were also talking about how one thing that they use coming in is a charter, a corporation, a corporate charter. And I would like to offer a definitions of what a charter is, when we're talking about these instruments of control that they are using. So do you mind if I go ahead and introduce the Black's Law definition of the word charter?
Sir, by all means.
Okay. It says a charter is an instrument that establishes a body politic or other organization, or that grants rights, liberties, or powers to its citizens or members. And I like this second one is a pretty strong one. A charter is an instrument by which a municipality is incorporated, specifying its organizational structure and its highest laws, which is specifically a written document making the persons residing, there's that word persons, we're going to get into that, residing within a fixed boundary, along with their successors, a corporation and a body of politics for and within that boundary, and prescribing the powers, privileges, and duties of the corporation. A city charter trumps all conflicting ordinances. So they've given full power to that charter, and that charter is what they're using as their means of control and exploitation. And we know that we are under a master charter here called the what, brother?
The Constitution.
Yes, sir. Okay, go ahead.
Constitution, which is changing over to whatever the UN is going to call it. But we're in the midst of a changeover from national governments to a global government.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to be run by the UN. But yeah, like you said, we'll get to that. But yeah, a charter, the Constitution, and matter of fact, do you know the one thing that's higher than the Constitution?
Contracts,
yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Contracts, whether it be a treaty or just a contract between you and me. Contracts are higher than the Constitution, and they are to be upheld because that is the very basics of commerce, which is what the Constitution really governs.
Right.
All of these chartered companies that came over here and expanded, the Constitution was meant for them and to control their powers,
mm-hmm.
not to be construed with the rights that the people have. They're the people's rights because they have the right not to be infringed upon.
Mm-hmm.
So, that understanding is very key. But, that also gets into exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about licenses. We have matrimony,
mm-hmm.
which, comes down from our upbringing. And for me, I can speak from a Christian perspective. I'm no longer a Christian, but, that was the way that I was raised. So marriage to me was taught to be between a man, a woman, and God. So God is supposed to be the head, and then, that flows down through the man and the woman. That was matrimony. What we call marriage today, was really known as matrimony until marriage came on the scene. Now, with these corporations, with their charters, and the way that they want to do things, they have specific terms where they define particular words. So once marriage came into being, they have a particular kind of terms that they use. But what I want to do now is I want to go over the, I guess we can go over the term license. Mm-hmm. That sounds like that would be a good place to kind of interject that. Let me go to my definitions real quick, brother.
I have a definition here for you.
Where's it coming from, brother?
Black's Law.
Okay, go ahead and bring it. What's the definition of?
License.
Okay, I have that as well.
Okay, go ahead. I
was going to do marriage first, but
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, marriage. This is coming from Black's Law Dictionary. Marriage, as distinguished from the agreement to marry and from the act of becoming married, is the civil status of one man and one woman united in law for life, for the discharge to each other and the community of the duties legally incumbent on those whose association is founded on the distinction of sex. I know it's a lot to unpack because they have a lot of terminology in there. Mm-hmm. But the things to highlight is, it's a distinguished from the agreement to marry. So courtship and you deciding who your partner is got nothing to do with it. And from the act of becoming married, the act of becoming married. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going through the ceremony, that has nothing to do with how they are viewing marriage. Mm-hmm. So that is what is called matrimony. Going through the ceremony, pledging yourself to one another, which is a contract, and then having whatever higher power that you want to subscribe to, being at the head of it. That is matrimony. That's got nothing to do with the contract that you're going to make with the state once you claim to be married. It is the civil status of one man and one woman united in law for life, for the discharge to each other and the community of the duties legally incumbent. So there is a certain responsibility that is presumed to be with the man and the woman in relation to the community. Well, what community is that? Is the community that they're defining, your community property. Mm-hmm. And you have duties, legal duties, and these legal duties you are incumbent to, which means, you're there's an expectation that you are going to fulfill these duties. It's a contract. So you are entering a contract with the state, and they do not recognize your matrimony nor the vows that you took.
Don't mean a thing.
Say that again, brother.
Don't mean a thing.
Don't mean a thing. So I think that is distinction. That is the distinction that most people, especially devout Christians, need to understand. And I won't even touch, the pastor's role and all of that. We touch on that later. I have, another reading that kind of breaks down and highlights everything that we're talking about. But now that we have the understanding of what marriage is, we can go over the definition of what a license is. Mm-hmm. Now, this is the definition that I have for license, and you can tell me how it might be a little different from yours. What is license? In the law of contracts, A license is permission accorded by a competent authority, conferring the right to do some act which, without such authorization, would be illegal or would be a trespass or a tort. Now, they have some buzzwords, so it does require that, people do some study of etymology and as well as vocabulary, such as competent. Competent is a buzzword, and I think we're going to go over that as we get more into status. So I'm going to leave that alone for right now. But conferring the right to do some act which, without such authorization, would be illegal. Illegal as opposed to legal, as opposed to lawful. So those are, terms that we just have to understand and get an understanding of. Also, the written evidence of such permission. So the license is not only getting the permission from the authority, it's also the written evidence of such permission. In real property law, an authority to do a particular act or series of acts upon on an other's land without posing any estate therein.
Brother Rio.
So, yes, sir.
What status must the people of this corporation be in for them to give you permission to do something? They're giving you permission. You love her? Oh, that's your girl? Oh, you love her? You want to be with her forever? Yeah, I'll grant y'all permission. You understand what I'm saying?
No, sir. No, sir. That is not the case. That is not the case. Let me finish laying it out, and that's going to become crystal clear.
All right, lay it out.
Okay? So, basically, not only do you have to have written permission in property law, you need a license from an authority to be on somebody else's land or their estate to do your business or to do whatever it is, live your life or do whatever that is that you want to do. That's basically what that last definition was just saying. Which you also have to have written evidence of authority that has to be recorded. It is distinguished from I'll have to go into that. In international law, license is defined as permission granted by a belligerent state to its own subjects or to subjects of the enemy to carry on trade. I thought that one was real interesting. So that's marriage, and that's license. So what is the definition of a marriage license? Well, a marriage license is simply the document that is executed by public authority that gives a couple the permission to marry. Think about those definitions, brother.
That just like what I thought. I mean, like I said, what must the status of a person? What is the governing structure? What is the structure that is governing these people? And what is the status people within that governmental structure, to where there are rights and privileges and permissions that can be given and taken away to those people?
Well, hold on. Let me hit you with something else, brother. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of marriage licenses in America. Okay. I got this off of the internet right before it went down, and I did not get the source. So if you Google history of marriage licenses in America, it should come up, but I don't have the access to give the people the source of where I got this from off of the web right now. But it starts off, I'm just going to read just a short snippet of it. George Washington and Abraham Lincoln was married without a marriage license. So how do we come to this place in America where marriage licenses are issued? Historically, all the states in America had laws outlawing the marriage of blacks and whites. In the mid-1800s, certain states began allowing interracial marriages or miscegenation, as long as those marrying received a license from the state. In other words, they had to receive permission to do an act which without such permission would have been illegal. Black's Law Dictionary points to this historical fact when it defines marriage license as a license or permission granted by public authority to persons who intend to intermarry. Intermarry is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as miscegenation, mixed or interracial marriages. What do you think about that? Tom, you there?
Yeah, say it again.
You didn't hear that?
No, for some reason you went out on me. It was something was doing with my iPhone because I got the very end of what you said.
Okay, let me read that again.
Yeah, go ahead one more time. My bad.
Okay, I don't know what you didn't hear, so I'm gonna start from historically. All the states in America had laws outlawing the marriage of blacks and whites.
Mm-hmm.
In the mid-1800s, certain states began allowing interracial marriages or miscegenation, as long as those marrying received a license from the state. In other words, they had to receive permission to do an act which without such permission would have been illegal.
Right. Well, that speaks to the definition. Go ahead.
Yep. Black's Law Dictionary points to this historical fact when it defines marriage license as a license or permission granted by public authority to persons who intend to intermarry. Intermarry is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as miscegenation, mixed, or interracial marriages.
So that's when the first concept of giving out a license first came into play, giving people permission to intermarry cross racial lines.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In the mid 1800s.
Well, they knew that's just another example of them tying into the vine. The only reason why they would do something like that is they needed the benefits of melanated people's blood flowing back in their direction. That would be the only reason why they would do something of that nature.
As well as to ensure that the wealth wasn't flowing outside of the communities that they wanted that, those assets and that money to go to as well.
Yeah. But that was a major genetic decision, I'm sure.
Right. But the question does have to be asked, why do the clergy, be them ministers, priests, pastors, or rabbis, etc., and the churches require you and your spouse to obtain a marriage license? But we ain't got to deal with that right now.
Hold on for a sec, Brother Rio. We got Brother Roz got a statement. Go ahead, Brother Roz.
Hey, peace. Thanks for allowing me to speak again.
Yes,
I was just thinking what you said was very interesting because I thought exactly along the same lines that essentially they wanted to allow an infusion of genetics from black people to diversify their gene pool since they're inbred. But the interesting part is for them to create the license around that says that the white people, the more powerful white people, wanted to control the numbers of their people that wanted to miscegenate. And to me, it says that there must have been record numbers of white people that wanted to enter marriage contracts with black people for them to create that law in the first place.
Yes,
Just immediately thought of Dr. Welsing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was when you were talking about matrimony versus marriage, I thought about traditional marriage is in a lot of the African cultures where the matrimony dictates everything because you have to bring a dowry. Once you bring the dowry, then the contract is entered between two families that their children would be married. And depending on the traditions of whatever ethnic group, the male would either move in and the woman's family compound or the woman would move in. So it's just very interesting when you talked about that. And then the other thing is when you were talking about matrimony in the sense of having a union in which God is the Godhead. I've always said that the main interest after practicing racism for white supremacy is to become godlike. And when we go to get, quote unquote, married, we're standing before God in the form of that white person overseeing that marriage. Even if you're going to a courthouse to, do an eloping or whatever, or if you're going, to Vegas somewhere, the person presiding over that union in the form of the deity is the white person. And they've effectively made themselves God in that sense. They talk about it in third person, but their domination of us, we have to go to them for everything in all 10 areas of people activity. So the person who controls every area of your activity is effectively your deity. So I just wanted to toss that out there. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Thanks so much for this. This is highly enlightening.
Yes,
and I'll mute my line.
Yes, sir, Brother Rob. Yo, that was powerful, man, the way he hit that, brother. That was powerful, you know what I'm saying? And that's just the reality.
Well, you're absolutely right, Brother Roz. And you have to understand, as well as you too, Brother Tommy, that, we're talking about a time period where, we both know that they do need an infusion of, melanated blood because, we'll get into that later. That's another topic for another day. Mm-hmm. But during this time period, when you have all these people intermixing, if you do not find a way to be able to track and control the way that people are intermarrying and living their lives, you have a lot of mulattoes running around. Some of them you cannot distinguish as to whether their heritage is, quote unquote, Negro, colored, African American, Native American, or Caucasian. So the attempts to eliminate that confusion, that's where you got, the one drop rule and, all these other various, crazy laws that and aspects of society that were popularized is, they're trying to track and decide who's going to be a slave, who's going to be considered a slave, and who's going to be given or granted privileges and benefits.
Right.
So, that is one, another reason for the marriage license at that particular time period. The way that it grows is just, Brother Ross hitting on the head is,
and I think what he said, the control of the amount of people who wanted to do it, that's a very good point. When white folk get to licensing things and wanting to control things and stem the ebb and flow of it, I think that's a good point. You know what I'm saying? Because there's tall, dark, and handsome is the mode of the day, and you have people who are not of the melanated seed who have a high level of attraction. And I told you I read a story, a scientist review where they took a study of white women and they did some type of study about their desire for black men, and they were showing that women that were not of color, or not melanated, were fantasizing literally about brothers, just straight up. So I ain't gonna get into all that, but I'm feeling him on that. That license was, yo, shut that down at this level. You feel me?
Yes, sir. Well, yes, I do, brother. Yes, I do. And I have an article that a brother wrote by the name of Virgil Cooper. And this is going to lead us into those invisible contracts, as well as some of the results of those invisible contracts, because I'm pretty sure, we have a very knowledgeable listening audience. So, but I don't know if they know where, some of this information comes from. So this is going to lead directly into a conversation about status, but also, how we sign over our children, how our children really aren't our own, based on these invisible contracts that we've entered into. So this is going to be a summary of what we already talked about, so people can bear with me, or if you didn't quite understand everything, he does a good job of breaking down the various aspects of this. But it's called Marriage License, The Real Truth, by Virgil, Virgil Cooper, Cooper. If you Google that, you should get it. It'll pop right up. So basically, enlightening conversation with a marriage license bureau. About 15 years ago, my former wife of 26 years filed for divorce. We had 7 children, 5 daughters and 2 sons. Our youngest at the time, our second son, was 5 years old. At the time, I prepared a counterclaim to the petition for dissolution that her attorney filed in domestic relations court. I met one afternoon with the head of the Maricopa County Superior Court Marriage License Bureau in downtown Phoenix. The Marriage License Bureau was headed by a young woman of about 25. I asked her to explain to me the general statutory implications of the marriage license. She was very cooperative and called the assistant, a tall black man who at the time was working on an operations manual for internal department use. She deferred for most technical explanations to her assistant. He walked through the technicalities of the marriage license as it operates in Arizona. He mentioned that marriage licensing is pretty much the same in other states, but there are a few differences. One significant difference he mentioned was that Arizona is one of 8 western states that are community property states, which we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. They view the man and the woman as separate entities with equal rights. The other states are common law states, including Utah, with the exception of Louisiana, which is a Napoleonic Code state. He then explained some of the technicalities of the marriage license. He said, first of all, the marriage license is a secular contract between the parties and the state. The state is the principal party in that secular contract. Brother Tommy, are you familiar with the term secular?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and quickly give a definition for the word secular, just in case there's someone out in the listening audience who's not aware.
Okay, go ahead.
But secular, as defined in black law, is not spiritual, not ecclesiastical. It's relating to affairs of the present world. And the definition of a contract, since we at this juncture, is an agreement upon sufficient consideration to do or not to do a particular thing. A covenant or agreement between 2 or more persons with a lawful consideration or cause. A deliberate engagement between competent, there's a word competent again, competent parties upon a legal consideration to do or abstain from doing some act. A contract or agreement is either where a promise is made on one side and assented to on the other side, or where 2 or more persons enter into engagement with each other by a promise on either side. Okay? Mm-hmm. The husband and wife are secondary or inferior parties. The secular contract is a 3-way contract between the state as principal and the husband and wife as the other 2 legs of the contract. He said in the traditional sense, a marriage is a covenant between the husband and wife and God. But in the secular contract with the state, reference to God is a dotted line and not officially included in the secular contract at all, which means they don't even recognize it. He said if the husband and wife wish to include God as a party in their marriage, that is a dotted line, they will have to add in their own minds. State's marriage license is strictly secular, he said. He said further that what he meant by the relationship to God being a dotted line meant that the state regards any mention of God as irrelevant, even meaningless. In his description of the marriage license contract, the related one other dotted line, he said, is the traditional religious context. Marriage was a covenant between the husband and wife and God, with husband and wife joined as one. This is not the case in the secular realm of the state's marriage license contract. The state is the principal or dominant party. The husband and wife are merely contractually joined as business partners, not in any religious union. They may even be considered, he said, connected to each other by another dotted line. So the picture he was trying to paint was that of a triangle with the state at the top and a solid line extending from the apex to from the state down the left side to the husband, and a separate solid line extending down the right side to the wife, with a dotted line merely showing that they considered themselves to have entered into a religious union of some sort that is irrelevant to the state.
Oh, wow. And now you got to go to this man, the same man, when you want to dissolve this relationship, and he's going to determine how you dissolve it.
And which is exactly what Brother Roz was speaking of. He's putting himself in the position of God.
Yes,
and, doing research, I found, a proper acronym being, Government Ordinance Department being God, because that's pretty much what they're trying to do. They're trying to run everybody's lives. But, he further mentioned that this religious overtone is recognized by the state by requiring that the marriage must be solemnized either by a state official or by a minister of religion that has been deputized by the state to perform the marriage ceremony and make a return of the signed and executed marriage license to the state.
You hear that? Deputized, Brother Rio. Go and put that into context.
Well, I mean, we can go into the definition of an agent or agency, but we're gonna come back around to that when we start talking about status.
Okay.
So I think we can keep moving along because it's gonna show up again.
Okay.
Again, he emphasized that marriage is a strictly secular relationship so far as the state is concerned, and because it is looked upon as a privileged business enterprise. Various tax advantages and other political privileges have become adhesion to the marriage license contract that have nothing at all to do with marriage as a religious covenant or bond between God and a man and a woman. Got any thoughts on that so far, brother?
You just basically went into a contract, and the reach of that contract is unknown to you. So, in other words, you are at a disadvantage.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Disadvantage is a good way of saying it.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So, in the civil law, the marriage is considered to be a for-profit venture or profit-making venture, even though it may never actually produce a profit in operation. And as the wife goes out to the local market to purchase foodstuffs and other supplies for the marriage household, she is replenishing the stocks of the business. So to restate, in the civil law, the marriage is considered to be a business venture that is a for-profit business venture. Moreover, as children come into the marriage household, the business venture is considered to have borne fruit.
Wow. Go ahead, brother.
Now back to the explanation by the Maricopa County Superior Court. Marriage Bureau's administrative assistant, he went on to explain that every contract must have consideration. The state offers consideration in the form of the actual license itself, the piece of paper, the certificate of marriage. The other part of consideration by the state, get ready for this, is the privilege to be regulated by statute. He added that this,
wow.
Go ahead, brother.
No, just the privilege. There's no privilege in being regulated by a statute. Matter of fact, that statute going to break you down.
Well, I guess that's just a matter of perspective, brother, because, they all for it.
Yeah.
He added that this privilege to be regulated by statute includes all related statutes and all court cases as they are ruled on by the courts, and all statutes and regulations into the future in the years following the commencement of the marriage. He said in a way the marriage license contract is a dynamic or flexible, ever-changing contract as time goes along, even though the husband and wife don't realize it. Another way to look at the marriage license contract with the state is as a contract of adhesion, a contract between two desperate, unequal parties. Again, a flawed contract, but it's a contract nonetheless. And a contract, as you said before, is the highest law of the land, even above the Constitution.
Yes. And it is binding across the board in that contract, just like they were saying about that marriage license, and you can see how it reflects the same in contracts. It doesn't care about the emotional, human, any attachments or anything in it, any emotional or compassion, any aspect of that. It cares none about those things, only about the terms of the contract. That's it.
And it stands as law as long as that contract is in place. So if you don't rebut the contract or the presumption that a contract exists or correct the fact that you have entered into a contract unknowingly or that it's unequal, unless you correct that, you are always subject to the terms of that contract.
Yes.
So a lot of times, this is just a sidebar, but a lot of times when we go into courts, we're already putting ourselves in their jurisdiction, number one. But number two, we're trying to argue constitutional laws and our rights and things that we should be able to do when that has nothing at all to do with it, because you know as well as I do, there really are no more judges. They're just magistrates.
Without a doubt.
Set in place to look over equity, which has, as Brother Ross says, has nothing to do with justice. Equity, and about them getting their cut because they got their hands into everything. So all he's trying to determine are the terms of the contract, who's in honor, who's not in honor.
Right.
If you're not in honor, well, you are going to have, well, we're getting into status. Let me digress and get back into this.
Go ahead.
Such a contract with the state is said to be a specific performance contract as to the privileges, duties, and responsibilities that attach. Now, that is key and is very important because just like we're talking about those terms, there's a presumption that a specific performance is going to be taking place, and that is what you are contracting to. And in that contract, you're going to have certain privileges. You're also going to have certain duties or expectations and responsibilities attached to that contract, whether you know it or not. So, you know, I believe that's what you often term invisible contract. Getting into situations that you don't have a clue that you were getting yourself into. Okay, so I'm about to bring this home, and we're about to see how it affects our prodigies.
Okay, come on with it.
He also said that it is very important to understand that children born to the marriage are considered by law as the contract bearing fruit, meaning the children primarily belong to the state, even though the law never comes out and says so in so many words. So because of the adhesion contract and the union between a man and a woman, not under God, but under the state, we have voluntarily contracted our community property, the things that a man and a woman who join together in marriage, not matrimony, and work towards building, from our perspective, to better our prodigy and to contribute to the community. But in the aspects of marriage, it's for the benefit of the community, of the state. And they're going to come in and they're going to regulate that marriage. So if you are conducting yourself in a way that the state feels is unfit, this is where they call for the authority to come in and take their children, not your children. You were talking about, trust, and trust depends on split titles. You have a legal and you have an equitable title.
That's right.
So what they've done is they come in and they've split the title, and they're saying that these kids are us. We're just giving you permission to take care of them for us. And as long as you are doing a good job, you good. But if you do something we don't like, we're taking them out.
And you can't stop us.
And there's nothing you can do to stop it because you voluntarily contracted into this. Ignorance or ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Brother Rio, opting into through the marriage contract, this magistrate telling you how much money you and your wife need to exchange between each other. The magistrate telling you where the children live, who has custody of them. These are the type of power and authority that we are giving away when we are signing into these invisible contracts and not understanding the full breadth of the contracts. Therefore, hey, you regulated and governed by them.
Yep, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So in regard, children born to the contract are regarded as the contract bearing fruit. So it's not really the man and the woman having children. It's the entity bearing fruit.
Bringing on more corporate identities.
Right, of which the state is entitled to the profits. So he said it is vitally important for parents to understand two doctrines that became established in the United States during the 1930s. The first is the doctrine of parentis patria. That's P-A-R-E-N-S. And then patria is P-A-T-R-I-A-E. That's the first doctrine. The second doctrine is in loco parentis. In loco, I-N, loco, L-O-C-O, parentis, P-A-R-E-N-T-I-S.
That's going to bring it.
That first doctrine, parentis patriae, means literally the parent of the country, or to state it more bluntly, the state is the undisclosed true parent. Along this line, there's a 1930s Arizona Supreme case that states parents have no property right in their children and have custody of their children during good behavior at the sufferance of the state. This means that parents may raise their children and maintain custody of their children as long as they don't offend the state. But if they in some manner displease the state can step in at any time and exercise its superior status and take custody and control of its children. The parents are only conditional caretakers. Thus comes the doctrine of in loco parentis. Now, this is one of the doctrines that gives rise to all the issues that we have with the school systems. I'm going to go back into the marriage license real quick, though.
Okay.
The marriage license is an ongoing contractual relationship with the state. It's dynamic. It can change and move and adapt with the times. So technically, the marriage license is a business license allowing the husband and wife, in the name of the marriage, to enter into contracts with third parties and contract mortgages and debts. They can get car loans, home mortgages, and installment debts in the name of the marriage because it is not only a secular enterprise, but it is looked upon by the state as a privileged business enterprise as well as a for-profit business enterprise. The marriage contract acquires property throughout its existence and over time. It is hoped that it increases in value. The marriage contract bears fruit by adding children. If sometime later the marriage fails and a divorce results, the contract continues in existence. The divorce is merely a contractual dissolution or amendment of the terms and conditions of the contract. Jurisdiction of the state over the marriage, over the husband and wife, now separated, continues over all aspects of the marriage, over marital property and over children brought into the marriage. This is why family law and the domestic relation court calls divorce a dissolution of the marriage, because the contract continues in operation but in amended or modified form. He also pointed out that the marriage license contract is one of the strongest, most binding contractual relationships the state has on the people.
So
one of the strongest ones, brother.
So there is no discharge. Just like when they say there's a discharge in a debt, the record is still there. It is still in play. There's no such a thing.
They just amend the terms of how they want the contracts to go. So basically, they're still keeping both entities as the fruit of the contract. So basically, they don't want to lose that fruit because, like you said, that gives them more corporate tax numbers.
Yeah, and just like a situation where a wife and a husband go in and buy a vehicle together, they would like both of their names on the loan so that if anything occurs, they have more than one person. They have both individuals to go after. So they're always setting it up to where, you know what I'm saying, they have two people on, everybody possible on the hook.
Right. But check this out, Brother Thomas.
Yeah. Hold on for a second.
His boss.
Okay, go ahead.
His boss, the young woman, Marriage Bureau department head, stated, "You have to understand that people who come in here to get a marriage license are in heat." Animal term. Animals are in heat. The last thing they want to know is technical, legal, and statutory implications of the marriage license. They're preying on the emotions and the ignorance of people, but they are directly referring to these people as animals, referring to us, everybody, and this is across the board. And, this got nothing to do with being melanated or non-melanated or anything in between. This is just power and control. They are getting control of everyone. They're viewing people as animals. Animals are property.
That's right.
And you can only give them privileges. They have no rights.
And the license is a permission, is a privilege.
It is definitely a privilege.
Yeah.
So and you can see the evidence of this mentality and this thinking in the way that different words are defined. Which if you go into wife, the definition of wife, the etymology of the word wife comes from Middle English, comes from with, which means woman, female, or lady. Also, but not especially, wife, from Proto-Germanic, uncertain origin, apparently felt as inadequate in its basic sense, leading to the more distinctive formation with man, source of woman. In Dutch, with now means in slang girl or babe. Babe is again an animal. Having softened somewhat from earlier sense of bitch.
Wow.
Which again is an animal.
Yeah, wow.
The modern German cognate also tends to be slightly be slighting or derogatory. In early medieval times, was woman, female, or again person being retained for woman of gentle birth or a lady, if you believe in that kind of thing. But from the 1200s, wife took on a common, almost vulgar tone that restricted its usage in certain circles and largely has been displaced by, more popular in German word, Frau, when they say Fraulein or something of that nature. To the more usual Indo-European word, it is represented in English by queen, which we all know queen is the king. The definition of queen is king's whore.
Wow.
So
the word wife definitely have negative connotations.
Words for woman also double for wife in some languages, which is weep, W-E-I-P, to twist, turn, wrap, perhaps with a sense of veiled person. Veiled person, somebody that's covered up or, again, behind somebody.
Brother Rio, give me a second real fast. We got a caller on the board, area code Red from Ohio. Go ahead and say what you got to say.
Yes, just really quick. Thank you for letting me speak again. I noticed that you're talking a lot about. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very good.
Yeah, you can be heard.
Okay. That you're talking a lot about basically the marriage, but it seems like there's also like the state can take away like single mothers' children, and I'm kind of wondering like how does that factor in, because they don't necessarily like of a single mother. I don't have any children, but I'm around a lot of Black females who are single mothers. They can also take away their kids. So I was, just kind of thinking about that as well. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. I'll mute myself.
Okay.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. Because remember, marriage licenses came into existence in the 1800s. So, and then in the 1930s, they started applying the doctrine of, the state is the father, the father of the country. And, they started being the head of the marriage household. So you could say from the 1930s, the people who got married then, they had children. Those children were the fruit of those contracts. So those children, in the eyes of the state, were property.
Straight up.
Because like the lady said, the people who come in here are in heat. Animals are in heat. So they get a marriage license, and these animals go off, and they're in heat. So they mate, and they have fruit. And it's profit for the state, which owns the animals. So even if that fruit grows up and never marries, not even getting into the birth certificate and other invisible contracts like the driver's license, voter registration, the
bank
banking
account,
system, and things of that nature, Social Security, things of that nature. Just the fact that the parents entered into a contract and bore fruit, which is the child, they are already considered property. And whether that person marries or not, if that profit goes on to have a child, which is more profit, that profit is going to be held under the same terms of the contract.
Wow. And in local parentis will rule the day.
In local parentis, yep. When you sign your kids up for school, you are giving them authority in local parentis.
Yes,
that means that you're giving the school guardianship. That basically you're allowing them to become another party in the parenting of the child.
And a parent in place of the parent is more specific.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And they have legal responsibilities that they're accountable for by the state. So there are certain things they can dictate to you, the natural parent who gave birth to the child, such as, getting immunization shots. your child has to have immunization. Well, no, we don't believe in that. Well, yeah, you do. You're into this contract. You enrolled your child in our school. You effectively, through an invisible contract, agreed to have us parent this child for at least a particular part of the day. And in order for us to do that, we don't need this kid to get immunized. End the discussion. And if you don't do it, we're going to report you to the state.
Right.
So the state can step in and say that, well, you're not living up to your obligation.
Right.
And either they're going to force compliance
Mm-hmm.
or they're going to take your kids away. How do you want to handle it?
Right. Right. And we all should see, Brother Rio, how based upon the way they have this system set up, and like you said, the birth certificate, the driver's license, all the many different invisible contracts that we are been at, adhesion takes place in we are not knowing. You can see how they, being the author of these things, give them the authority, and you can see how they push their authority because they have the ability to.
Well, they have the ability to. They can do it forcefully, or, their tactics are to get us to consent to it.
Yeah.
So right now, because we don't have the knowledge to not enter these contracts, which they may still do it forcefully, but that's a whole nother story. That's a different animal.
Right.
But right now, we are crying out. We're crying foul, and we're complaining, and we're telling these people, you don't have the right to do this, and they're looking at us like, wow, you people are, hey, man, we doing a great job, because these people, they don't have a clue
exactly
that they are volunteering for everything that they are getting.
Yeah.
So we have to educate ourselves, so, on our part, so, that's the part that we have to raise up. We have to raise our level of consciousness. We have to raise our vibration so that we can see these tricks, these invisible contracts, and we can avoid them, and then come together, plot, plan, and strategize of how we want to do things, and become self-determining.
I agree.
And we gonna kick the mentality of these these psychotic
brother.
Right in the keister, and get back to our ancient roots and philosophies and ways of thinking, and get back on track, brother.
Right, but hey, we're going through that process. It starts with peeping their game first, and being able to see them coming from many different directions, because they slipping and sliding on you with so many different angles, because they have studied us so well. You know what I'm saying? And so they know that, it has to be a holding down of us. But, hey, brother, we're caught up in some invisible contracts. We're going to move into some different areas about those invisible contracts and the different ways they affect us in the next show. I would really, really like to really point out to our brothers and sisters how when you go into these banks, these are the king's banks, and creating a interest-bearing checking account and the invisible track and the adhesion that applies you to, people will just be blown away on that they are directly doing business with the king when they are going to these financial institutions referred to as banks.
Brother Tommy.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you ask Brother Scotty how much time we have? I really want the people to hear that clip. Now that we laid out this information, I think it'll give us some good perspective, as to the situations in which we're talking about and the situations that we want to correct.
Okay, all right. Well, Scotty said we good. What this is basically the sister who was killed in a freezer and or something happened. Do you know exactly what happened with the sister, Brother Rio? They don't understand how she got inside the freezer.
I do, but I'd rather not deal with that in this particular segment. It just, this could be, because this could be anybody, and it has been a lot of people, and it's a story that we hear a lot. So I'd rather just have the message that we're trying to combat be the emphasis today.
We'll set the stage on that message. We'll set the stage on that message then.
Okay. This is from a parent who is going through a crisis with their child, and I believe it speaks for itself, and I mean we can comment afterwards. But I mean, it's a heartfelt emotion, and
she had no access to her child.
Speak for itself.
Basically, the authorities had total control over her child's physicality. Her child, she could not even see her own baby. So let's get into it now.
Remind you, we didn't know this was a crime scene at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
After they declared she was dead, when I started asking, can I see my baby body, and they first denied me, and I asked her for the sergeant name, the police name, and the detective name, and the sergeant name.
Yeah.
When I asked the sergeant for his badge number, then he said, I got to talk to the morgue. I said, can I see how my baby laying down there, how she died?
Yeah.
And they wouldn't let me see my baby from 1:30 a.m. in the morning of today.
Yeah.
Until about what time? About for like 4 hours after that.
Yeah.
Then that's when they pronounced her dead.
Okay. And how are they
saying? Wait, no, they told me she was. I'm sorry. They told us she was dead at 1 something, but they didn't let me see her body until 4 hours later. They did let me see. They wouldn't. They refused my mother, my sisters, her uncles. They refused my family to see her. They said only you and your daughter can see it, and you can't take pictures because this is a crime scene.
And this is still in the deep freeze.
This in the deep freezer, but they had at this time they had let the morgue take her, move her, defrost the freezer.
Right.
Her hair had soap and water up on there.
Yeah.
She was defrosted in the freezer. They defrost the whole freezer.
Yeah.
I guess that's what it gave it 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
But I asked her, can I see my daughter? Yeah. Why I can't see how she died? Why I can't see? Because I know in the deep freezer, I know at my job, and it pull open there. Remind you can't even hold your balance.
Yeah.
Walking.
Right. Right.
So now you got to struggle, and at my job with our coolers, you got to have some strength to yank these doors open.
Yeah.
Now, remind you, they said she couldn't barely hold herself up, yet alone pull open the door.
Right.
And they said, the police department said, freak accidents like that do happen.
So they're saying
and they said they didn't see her. And it's a camera sitting right in front of the cooler. They didn't see how she got in there.
So they
didn't
trying
even
to
see
tell
her
you
yank
that
herself.
they're trying to tell
I said, this the detectives that was out there.
Okay.
And then he was the one that was out there when they first discovered. They study coming in there. We sitting in the lobby. We wasn't even allowed to, when they discovered the body, we wasn't even allowed to stand in the hotel lobby. They put us out. We had to stand outside and look. And we had to look on the 11th floor. We just looking, just hoping and praying that we could get some kind of help. Because the people looking at us like, they looking at us.
Yeah.
Looking like, what they doing out here?
What are you doing?
Right. And we was forbidden to come back in the hotel room. So we studied, tried begging for help. The police department couldn't even help us. After they found my baby dead, they couldn't even help us. The bastards! They couldn't even help us.
Brother Rio.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, brother.
Well, I think it's highlighting, a situation that we often find ourselves in, especially during times of crisis, dealing with loved ones, a time when you're definitely prone to be emotional. So, I mean, especially if you're unaware of these invisible contracts, this could be traumatizing. I mean, it is traumatizing, either way you look at it. But, I mean, the fact that other people have control over your own loved ones, and all you want to do is you want to do what you want to do, and, you have a God-given right to do that. But just because of, a contract that you didn't understand fully, you're subject to, these kind of atrocities. So, we bring this information, hoping that, that you share the information and that, we can all come together and discuss openly these issues and things that are going on. And, we start to view the other so-called people that some people look to unify as well as lead or sound the drums or try to make change through proper channels. put this on their agenda, because these are the hearts and souls of the issues that we are facing. They prevent us from being self-determining and, just unifying as a whole. And it allows us to hold on to illusions that just aren't within the realm of this reality. So, anything you want to add to that, brother?
Yes, sir, brother. I'm going to add to that. And also, we're about to go ahead and get on up out of here. And we've had a really good show. What I would like to say is I feel like that video really speaks to the level of domination and control that the Europeans have over our people at this time. And it really speaks to what Sheikh Anta Diop said, that if our black ancient ancestors woke up and looked at the geopolitical situation, they would lose their mind, because the where we were at and the level of control we have over our own lives and the lives of others compared to where we are at now, it would really literally just blow their mind, because they would never thought that we'd be in this predicament or this situation. So we have to understand that we are being held in a situation still like property, and they are still controlling and dominating aspects of our lives, and we have to understand that. And Brother Rio, on the way out the door, I would like to read this little quote because I know a lot of people are protesting in St. Louis, and it's been going on, and I know it's designed and everything, but people have to understand the status that they're in and why this system does exactly what it does. And I'm about to read this little snippet to you. It's in the book called In the Matter of Color, Race in the American Legal Process During the Colonial Period by Leon Higginbotham. And in 1705, they were creating statutes, and it was a statute. This is a particular statute in the state of Virginia in the year 1705. So this is basically how they feel about black people and the reason why they treat black people the way that they do. It says, "And if any slave resist his master or owner or other person by his or her order, correcting such slave, and shall happen to be killed in such correction, it shall not be accounted felony. But the master, owner, and every such other person so giving correction shall be free and acquit of all punishment and accusation for the same, as if such accident had never happened." Okay, Brother Rio, a really good show. Knowledge and information you brought was heavy and strong. We will definitely be on next week at 8 o'clock. Mondays from 8 to 10. Definitely going to bring some powerful information. Anything before we get up out of here, Brother Rio?
No, brother. I think you said it all. We're gonna tackle, this topic, continuation with the invisible contract, as well as dealing with status, and we're gonna continue to deal with the vocabulary as well, because we have to change our mindset and we have to use different words. Not only know what they mean so that we use them in the right venue, but when we are communicating with each other, that we use words that empower instead of hindering and creating further illusions. So with that, everybody have a good week. Protect each other and yourself, and we'll be back here next Monday, 8 o'clock from 8 to 10. Peace.
Yes, sir, Brother Rio, and we out.
You are tuned in to the Black Talk Radio Network. For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com. The views and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Whether you're dealing with engineering or technology, when you talk about writing and reading, when you're talking about the refinement of speech, when you talk about grammar or the dialectic, or if you're talking about concepts of astronomy or music.
The people from the Nile Valley were the very first people to develop a concept of time. Time is a concept that sprang from the minds of African people. They were the first people to divide the day into 24 hours. They were the first people to develop the calendar, 365 and a quarter days. They were the first people to build with stone. They were the first people to develop systems of education, the first universities. They invented writing. They invented paper. They developed libraries. They were the first physicians, the first psychologists, the first dentists, the first brain surgeons. They were the first governors, the first rulers, the first men and women to orient structures to celestial bodies in order to harness the spiritual energy that's generated within a structure that is properly aligned to celestial spheres. So in other words, they were human beings who knew how to manifest the power of God on earth.
Premiumbeat.com.